There is a moment in every person's life when they realize something uncomfortable. Respect is not automatically given to you because you are kind. It is not guaranteed because you work hard. And it is definitely not guaranteed because you try to keep the peace. In fact, some people will treat your kindness like weakness the moment they sense you are afraid to create discomfort. That is the part nobody teaches you growing up. Most disrespect does not begin with hatred. It begins with testing. A small comment, a subtle interruption, a joke that feels slightly too personal, a dismissive tone in front of other people. Tiny moments, but those moments are rarely random. People are watching for something. They are watching your reaction. They want to know, can you be pushed? Can you be embarrassed? Can you be ignored? Can your boundaries be crossed without consequence? And the answer you give is usually not verbal. It is behavioral, because every time you tolerate something that violates your dignity, you quietly teach people how they are allowed to treat you. Not through speeches, not through confrontation, through repetition. Most people never realize this is happening. They think respect is based on intentions. It is not. Respect is based on observed standards. People watch what you allow. They watch what you ignore. They watch what changes your behavior. And they especially watch what happens after someone crosses a line. That is where your real standards become visible. The problem is that most people are terrified of conflict. Not physical conflict, social conflict, awkwardness, tension, disapproval, the possibility of being disliked. So when someone disrespects them, they immediately rush to smooth the situation over. They laugh nervously. They minimize it. They pretend it did not bother them. Then later that night, the conversation replays in their head over and over again. They think of the perfect comeback 2 hours too late. They imagine what they should have said. But the real issue was never the lack of a clever response. The real issue was fear. Fear of enforcing a standard in real time. And that fear silently rewires the entire dynamic. Because once someone learns they can disrespect you without consequences, your position in their mind changes. Not consciously. Not maliciously. Automatically. Human beings constantly measure social boundaries. Every interaction teaches people what category to place you in. Strong boundaries. Weak boundaries. Emotionally reactive. Easy to manipulate. Difficult to pressure. Afraid of tension. Comfortable with tension. These judgments happen instantly. And once people place you in a category, they interact with you accordingly. This is why some people walk into a room and almost nobody tests them. It is not because they are aggressive. It is because their standards are clear. People can feel it. Not from threats. Not from loudness. From consistency. That consistency changes everything. Now here is the mistake most people make when they finally decide they are tired of being disrespected. They think the answer is aggression. So they start trying to dominate conversations. They become overly confrontational. They force confidence. They try to sound intimidating. But aggression is unstable. Real presence is calm. The most powerful people in any room are usually not the loudest ones. They are the people least desperate to control the room emotionally. And that becomes incredibly important the moment disrespect appears. Because when someone takes a shot at you, they expect movement. They expect emotional reaction, defensiveness, anger, embarrassment, over-explaining, nervous laughter. That reaction is the reward. The moment you emotionally react, they gain information. They know they affected you. And once someone knows they can affect you emotionally, the balance changes. That is why one of the most powerful things you can do in moments of disrespect is become completely still. Not passive. Still. There is a massive difference. Passive means shrinking yourself. Stillness means refusing to surrender emotional control. Imagine someone makes a disrespectful comment in front of a group. Most people instantly try to repair the social tension. But when you pause, when you look at them calmly, when you let silence sit there for 2 or 3 uncomfortable seconds, something strange happens. The pressure shifts. Suddenly they become aware of their own behavior. Because silence forces exposure. People become uncomfortable when there is no immediate emotional reaction to hide behind. And that discomfort is powerful. Not because you are trying to intimidate them, but because your stillness communicates something. I notice what you just did. And I am not rushing to make this comfortable for you. That energy changes the room instantly. Now eventually, words matter. But the words themselves are less important than the frame underneath them. Most people either stay silent forever or explode emotionally. Both are weak positions. One avoids conflict completely. The other loses control completely. The strongest response exists in the middle. Calm, precise, controlled. Instead of attacking the person, you calmly force clarity. Can you explain what you meant by that? That sounded personal. Was it supposed to? Say that again. Simple sentences, but psychologically devastating, because now the person has to make a decision publicly. Either own the disrespect directly, or retreat from it. And most people retreat, because most disrespect is built on ambiguity. People hide aggression inside humor, sarcasm, or plausible deniability. They want the effect of disrespect without the accountability of it. The moment you calmly remove the ambiguity, the entire strategy collapses. This is why emotional control matters more than verbal skill. Anyone can sound confident after rehearsing lines in the mirror. But composure under pressure is different. Composure changes status dynamics in real time. Because the room is not just listening to your words. They are measuring your emotional stability. And stability creates authority. Now here is where this becomes difficult. Handling one moment correctly is not enough. Anybody can have one strong moment. Real standards are revealed afterward. Because after the tension passes, most people immediately return to normal behavior. They become warm again, available again, open again, and this unintentionally teaches the other person something dangerous. There are no lasting consequences. This is where most boundaries fail. Not in confrontation, in follow-through, because standards without behavioral consequences are just performances. If someone repeatedly disrespects you and nothing changes in your behavior afterward, then your boundary was never real. It was theater. Real boundaries alter access. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Quietly. Your energy changes. Your availability changes. Your openness changes. You stop investing deeply in people who repeatedly show you disrespect. And contrary to what many people think, this is not cruelty. It is self-respect. There is a difference. Cruelty is punishing people emotionally. Self-respect is refusing to reward behavior that damages your dignity. That distinction matters enormously, because many people stay trapped in unhealthy dynamics simply because they confuse boundaries with meanness. They think protecting themselves makes them selfish, so they tolerate things they should never tolerate. Disrespect, mockery, manipulation, constant subtle undermining, and over time, something dangerous happens. Their self-respect erodes quietly. Not all at once. In tiny invisible fragments. Every time they stay silent when they wanted to speak. Every time they abandon their own feelings to protect someone else's comfort. Every time they accept behavior that violates their values. They disconnect from themselves slightly more. And eventually they stop trusting their own instincts entirely. This is why learning to enforce standards changes more than your relationships. It changes your identity. Because every boundary you enforce sends a message inward too. It tells your own mind, my dignity matters. My discomfort matters. My standards are real. That internal message changes the way you carry yourself. People can feel when someone respects themselves. And they can also feel when someone does not. Now there is another uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Some people will test you again after you enforce a boundary. Not directly, subtly. A smaller joke. A lighter insult. A passive-aggressive comment disguised as humor. This is the second test. And psychologically, it matters more than the first one. Because now they are trying to discover whether your earlier response was authentic or temporary. Many people fail here. They become uncomfortable with the tension they created earlier, so they soften their standards to restore harmony. But consistency is everything. If your boundaries disappear the moment social pressure appears, people learn that persistence eventually breaks you. That lesson becomes dangerous. So the second response must become colder, not louder. That distinction is critical. Emotionally reactive people escalate upward. Emotionally disciplined people reduce access downward. One creates chaos. The other creates consequences. And consequences teach people far more effectively than emotional explosions ever will. Eventually people learn something very simple. Disrespect costs access. Not because you punish them. Because you value yourself enough to stop investing where respect does not exist. Now here is perhaps the most important psychological shift of all. Disrespect is rarely about your actual value. It is information about the other person. Secure people do not constantly test others. Confident people do not need to diminish people. Emotionally healthy people do not search for weak spots in everyone around them. When someone repeatedly disrespects others, they are revealing something. Insecurity, ego fragility, jealousy, need for control, need for validation. Strong people usually do not spend much time trying to make others feel small. They do not need to. That realization changes the emotional experience completely. Because once you stop interpreting disrespect as a verdict on your worth, you stop reacting from pain. And responding from clarity instead of pain changes everything. Pain reacts emotionally. Clarity responds strategically. Pain seeks revenge. Clarity enforces standards. Pain tries to win the moment. Clarity changes the dynamic permanently. That difference is life-changing. Over time, something interesting starts happening when your standards become consistent. People begin adjusting automatically. They choose their words more carefully around you. They think twice before crossing lines. They become more respectful without being asked. Not because they fear you, because they understand you. And understanding creates predictable social consequences. That predictability becomes reputation. A real reputation is not built through image. It is built through patterns. People observe how consistently you protect your dignity under pressure. And eventually your reputation starts working before you even speak. The room already knows. This person is calm. This person notices things. This person is respectful, but not weak. This person does not tolerate disrespect quietly. That kind of presence is powerful because it reduces the need for confrontation entirely. Most people stop testing standards that consistently hold. Now eventually, there is one final stage. Sometimes the person comes back. Maybe they apologize. Maybe their behavior changes. Maybe they attempt to reconnect. This is where many people sabotage themselves. Because they immediately restore the old dynamic. Instant forgiveness. Instant warmth. Instant emotional access. But the way you end a conflict teaches people the cost of starting one. If disrespect leads to temporary discomfort and then everything fully resets, the lesson becomes forgettable. But when someone realizes that access, closeness, and trust are not automatically restored, the lesson becomes permanent. This does not mean holding grudges forever. It means understanding something mature people eventually learn. Trust rebuilds slowly. Respect rebuilds through consistency. And relationships evolve after violations. Sometimes permanently. That is not bitterness. That is reality. Healthy adults understand that actions change dynamics. And one of the strongest things you can do is allow those changes to remain real instead of pretending nothing happened. Because pretending nothing happened teaches people your standards are negotiable. And negotiable standards eventually disappear. At the deepest level, this entire conversation is not really about conflict. It is about self-respect. The reason so many people tolerate disrespect is not lack of intelligence. It is lack of permission. They secretly believe protecting their dignity makes them difficult. They believe tension is inherently bad. They believe being liked matters more than being respected. But eventually life teaches everyone the same lesson. The people who respect you most are usually not the people you endlessly accommodated. They are the people who encountered your standards and realized they were real. Real respect is not built on endless tolerance. It is built on clarity. Clarity about what you accept. Clarity about what you reject. Clarity about who gets access to your energy. And once that clarity exists, your entire presence changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop replaying conversations endlessly. You stop fearing discomfort. You simply notice behavior, respond accordingly, and continue building your life. That is real power. Not domination. Not intimidation. Not aggression. Self-possession. The ability to remain emotionally grounded while enforcing your standards without apology. So the next time someone disrespects you, remember this. Do not rush emotionally. Become still. Notice the behavior without shrinking from it. Respond calmly. Make the line visible without drama. And most importantly, let your behavior afterward communicate that your standards are real. Because the goal is not revenge. The goal is alignment. Alignment between what you believe you deserve and what you are actually willing to tolerate. And once those two things finally match, people begin treating you differently almost automatically. Not because you demanded respect. Because your behavior quietly proved that your dignity is no longer negotiable.